Hannah Rohn. This is Heather Sherwood from Chicago Botanic Garden, and we're going to be making some cement containers that look just like hypertufa stone, and we're going to be using Portland cement, peat, and perlite. So we start out by laying out our cement, and you can kind of base that around whatever size mold you want to use, whatever size container. You kind of just have to eyeball it. It's not super technical. So we like to make it pretty flattened out because we're going to mix stuff into it. So this is the peat that we put in that helps make it lighter and more crumbly when we want it to look a little bit more natural and crumble. So we do about 60% cement, 20% peat, and 20% perlite, but you can kind of mess with it to make it how you like it. So then we smooth it back out a little bit to remix in perlite. Good?
Yeah.
And perlite has the same kind of effect of making it lighter and crumblier and a little better texture.
We try and just make sure you don't see any white, the screaming white of the perlite before we start adding water.
Yeah, it's a little dirtier and better looking. Adding the water gets a little tricky because you don't want it to be too dry or too wet. But we'll see if we can get it to the perfect consistency.
This is about the consistency you want. And you might get chunks of peat in there still, but that's okay, because that'll help give you texture.
So this is the container that we're using for our mold. You can pretty much use anything. It's really up to you and what you want to risk damaging. This is just one of our standard garden tubs that we use, and it's flexible and we think it'll be a nice size container. So what we're going to do is line it with plastic so that we can put the cement into it. And sort of a general rule for the amount, I know we said it's pretty rough and you have to eyeball it, but it's kind of working out to be filling the container about halfway up with the cement before you mix it should be sort of an estimate for how much you'll need, but again, it's never really going to be perfect. So we put plastic in here, and then what we're going to do is put a base layer of cement in, trying to smooth it out to make a nice flat bottom. Depending on the size of the container, you want the bottom to be pretty sturdy. Something like this doesn't have to be quite as thick as larger containers we've made, but you definitely want like a good 2-inch base on something. And it's going to be different, obviously, if you're making a smaller indoor type of container. But basically, we've been using the plastic to shape it down because it's kind of nasty if you get it on your hands, and it'll kind of ruin your night because they'll be so dry. Then we take our second piece of plastic, and we put it over that first layer because we're going to put sand in there to weigh down what will be the inside of the container. Go ahead. So then you can kind of pull the plastic around to shape how you want the inside, and taking into consideration that you need some sturdy walls. Alright, so once you get a little bit in there, you can kind of pull it and see where you're going to fill in with cement.
One of the most important things when you're doing this, and especially using a sand bucket for the base, is you don't want 2 pieces of plastic to meet, because that's how you get holes or thin sidewalls. So you want to make sure your cement and your sand mixture kind of rise up at the same time. As you put the sand and cement around, you can mold it.
And when you're doing your first one, you can kind of get a feel for if you wanted your mix to be a little drier or wetter. Because if it's too wet, it'll kind of seep down and the sand isn't as effective for keeping a form, and if it's too dry, it's almost like you're using clay and it's not really doing its own thing. And you don't need to worry too much about the wrinkles in the plastic when you're moving it, because it makes for a nice texture, but if it gets too wrinkled and you get cement in between there and the wrinkles going all the way across to the other plastic, that can be problematic. So now that we've got this all set and it's kind of stable on its own, we're not too worried about the top edges being uneven because that's kind of natural looking. But we have to let it dry for about 12 hours and then we will get ready to texturize it and make it pretty. So this is a finished trough that we made for the Heritage Garden here. Obviously a different shape than we showed with the circular container. We're going to be making about 25 more, so looking to have 65, 70, 75 in Heritage Garden total. So basically this has been cured for about 4 days right now. Ideally, you'll take it out of its form the following day after you make it because it's still wet and it's soft and it's pretty easy to hack away at and make it look nice. So you can see down here, this is the bottom and it's pretty smooth from the plastic, and this is the look we're going for to make it look like that hypertufa. And so when you unwrap it, you're going to have, you can kind of see lines from the plastic and whatnot, and that's a good starting point, and kind of try to deepen it a little bit, and you can carve in it like that when it's really soft. And this is still really soft and it's been almost 4 days, so it's not like you need to panic and hurry. This is a really great tool. Pretty much you can just start brushing right at it and you can see it crumble away. And again, this is 4 days, so it's still pretty easy. This is actually for breaking stone and cinder blocks, so this is a really nice tool, or you know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just something to chip away at it with. So we kind of like to make some little bumps, and then you just kind of brush over it. And really not too hard to make it look natural. And the best part is you can't really screw it up unless you start hammering too hard, but hopefully you've given yourself a strong enough base that it's not a problem. So as far as when you're done with these after the season and you need to store them, they're pretty darn happy. They're pretty hard to screw up. We haven't cracked any from storage, so keep them as protected as you can, but don't be too afraid of them. And now that we're finished with this one, don't forget that you need to put holes in the bottom for drainage so you don't have a big swamp inside. We just drill about 3 holes in the bottom, and that's exactly what we need.